FlatsClass fans, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is all about picking the right lure color for summertime. That's right, I've got 3 proven strategies that will trigger redfish, speckled trout, and flounder. No guesswork needed. Stay tuned. So for those of you that are new to the channel, I'm Captain C.A. Richardson. I've been an inshore fishing guide now for 25 plus years. Do a little television show that some of you might know, FlatsClass TV. It's been on for 19 years, and I've got tons of artificial lure experience as a tournament angler. A question that I'm pitched all the time is, I want to know more about lure color. How do I choose lure color? Well, that changes season to season for inshore. Now, summertime, I'm going to talk about 2 profiles really, and that's going to be paddle tails and jerk shads, 5-inch jerk shads in particular, or variations like the Z-Man big ballers and things like that. But you've got to understand that summertime conditions are different than any other time of the year. You have higher water temps, you have higher tide levels, you have a lot more current moving, you've got more rainfall, so the color of the water changes quite a bit this time of year. And then you've got a lot of pressure. And then, you know, a lot of us are fishing zones that we normally did not fish over the late fall, wintertime, and early spring. Now we're fishing deeper, some of us. Some of us are fishing further back into cover. And to understand what colors are going to have the most drawing power to pull fish in, well, I'm going to give that intel to you right now. Let's talk about it. So let's talk about some environmental factors that you need to put into your equation to figure out what is going to be effective as a lure color during the summer months. Water clarity is going to be paramount. I'm going to say sunlight or light penetration is going to be important. And then thirdly is going to be water temperature and forage movement, because that is going to play into that match the hatch deal a little bit. So let's talk water clarity first. There are a couple of different water clarities that you could be faced with. Number 1 would be clear, 2 would be stained, and 3 would be actually dirty. Now, in different locations, you might experience all of these. For me, I live on the Nature Coast here in Florida. Our water is fairly clear. But when we approach rainy season, we start getting a little color to our water. If you're fishing near the rivers, you get some of those tannins, some of that brown colored water. If you were getting a lot of rain and you've got lots of grass, you get a little bit of algae in the water. So sometimes the water has that little green tint to it. The number one thing is if you're getting enough rainfall and you're getting changing water clarity conditions, it really determines how well the game fish can see your lure. And if you want major drawing power, you're going to have to accommodate or adjust to that. All right, then there's changing light conditions. They change a lot in the summer. You might start off at low light, okay, in the morning. So you're going to be using some colors that are going to have some contrast to it because you want that drawing power. Then next, you're going to have that bright, hot sun that is just going to clean it all up, and then you might have to make another change at that point. Let's just say that's 10, 11, 12 o'clock. Then you get to the afternoon, you've got these summertime showers. So all of a sudden the clouds start coming and start muting that light. You start getting a sea breeze. Things are changing. So you're going to have to make another color change likely. And then for those of you that fish all day or prefer to fish after the summer showers when the water is cooler from the rain and you start getting that low light period again, then again, you're going to have to make a color change. So that plays into it a lot. Then there's water temperature, and you're thinking, why water temperature? Well, water temperature really determines what type of bait is around. And that is kind of that match the hatch look that you're going to have. So let's tackle that match the hatch deal first because it's the most obvious and it's what most of you will do. You'll want to see what's in the water and you'll want to match that bait. It makes perfect sense, especially if you're fishing clear water. So if you're thinking that way, and because bait fish are the #1 protein source in the summer months, especially for speckled trout and redfish, you're probably going to be using some shade of white. Anything that looks bait fish like, whether that's pearl, maybe you're going to pick up some beer run. That's a great color. The last 2 years has been Disco Cisco. It's just been one of those colors that I've fallen in love with, and a lot of my clients have fallen in love with it. It looks so much different in the water than it does in the package, and I'll take one out for you. But that match the hatch is important. Now, I talk a lot at FlatsClass University about not only match the hatch, but I talk a lot about matching the size of the bait as well. But this is more about color, and we'll talk about that in another video. But try and pick those colors, especially, like I said, if you've got clear water or even if you have tannin water. Tannin water has that woody-like stain, that tea color to it. It's still clear, it's just got a little bit of stain in it. So then you might be picking more like the root beers or the golds. Another great color would be something like the Right Stuff, which is kind of a root beer gold, golden brim-like color. Those are what you're looking for when you're fishing that clear type water. Now, let's move on to the next scenario. The next scenario is, and I'm looking down here at these baits, is let's just say you're faced with murkier or more turbid water. A lot of rain, you're fishing near a river, and you've got that chalky type look to some water, or you're fishing mullet muds, something where the fish aren't going to quite get as good a look. When that happens, for me, I want to throw a very bold, contrasting color. Now, in years past, I've done color videos on, is purple the new white? And what I meant by that in that video was purple, that purple color just stands out in murkier water. It also stands out in darker light conditions as well. But in murky water, purple or black or even a root beer with some heavy flake in it will appear to have more drawing power to call fish in. But you can also use lures that have been tail shot. And what I mean by that, and this is a secret here because this is a bait that hasn't been released yet, this is the Thick Trick from Z-Man. Okay, you see how it's got that root beer look, which is the dark color you want, but it's got the tail shot of a bright fluorescent chartreuse. This is a go-to bait many times. But anytime you can use anything with a tail shot that's got a bright color, whether it be flame orange, hot chartreuse, hot pink, and you've got those big changes in color, those, again, in the summer months are going to have more drawing power. You might say, so why is it so important in this time of year to have that drawing power? You know, if you don't know what drawing power is, it's the ability to bring a fish from a greater distance. You got to remember, with these higher tides, okay, these fish kind of spread out across the flat. They spread into the marsh, and they can go anywhere they want. So it's important to be able to have lures or baits that can appeal to fish from farther away. I mean, if you're going to play the numbers game, that's the best way to play it. All right, now let's talk about some light conditions. If you're going to fish throughout the day, you're going to have to make adjustments to color throughout the day. So if you start off at sunrise, you're going to need to use these natural, dark, contrasting colors. One of my favorite that have come to light here lately has been like Bayou Tiger, which has a little bit of chartreuse belly, but it's basically a darker color. They see a darker color in the water, and that that darker color and that low light really appeals to them. And then as that sun gets higher off the horizon, then you're going to go back to those translucent, those blue, white, blue glimmer and colors like that, that have that translucency and look more baitfish-like, especially if, again, you're targeting speckled trout, flounder, and redfish. Then in that afternoon period, when it gets overcast, you'll probably start transitioning back to like watermelon reds, root beer golds, things like that, going towards sunset. So understand that there is an adjustment all day long to light, time of day, water clarity, matching the hatch. You're going to make these choices with these combos. Now, naturally, I have some favorite, what I'm going to say, combinations or colors that I like to throw, because you could add another third color or bright color by changing the jig head color. Not always am I rigged Texas style. Lots of times I'll fish an open jig head if I think I'm going to kind of sight fish, or I've got a clean zone where I'm fishing more sand than grass or mud than grass. So you got to consider the scenario that you're facing so that you can make some of these smart color choices. But don't always think that you have to throw supernatural colors. I think those of us that fish in clear water fisheries always think we have to throw these very, very natural colors. Many times when the fish are spread out in the summertime, because there's so much more water, I will throw bold colors even in clear water. When others are throwing those whites and those translucent colors that look like the real deal, lots of times I'll throw something that has a chartreuse head or a bright pink head or something like that, or a tail shot of orange or chartreuse. And a lot of that is just to create drawing power, because I've got more water to deal with. It's not like the spring where the fish were easier to find. They're harder to find now. And even some of you, we're talking about light right now. I do a lot of skipping docks, skipping mangroves. It's important to have those contrasting colors or those tail shot bright colors or heads when you're doing stuff like that, so that the fish can find it faster. It draws them from farther away. That's what it's all about, is making sure you get those opportunities. All right, let's talk about my color combos, or my colors that are confidence colors for me personally. Now, I'm going to tell you, like I did early on, my favorite lures to throw, soft plastic profiles, I should say, this time of year are either going to be paddle tails or jerk baits. Now, I prefer jerk baits because I feel like I can keep them cleaner and I can keep them in the zone longer, especially if I'm skipping docks or mangroves or doing more sight fishing to specific targets. I don't like to spray and pray as much, but if you had to, then the paddle tail is the way to go. But these colors are going to work really well for you. I'd say for this time of year, probably the #1 color you're going to use is a pearl or a white colored bait. Now, you've got the opportunity to add like a chartreuse jig head to this, to give it some contrast, to give it some pop, to give it that drawing power. That's important. But I use a lot of that this time of year, especially if I'm fishing with clients or friends. I'm going to use that. But that's mostly for brighter light conditions or cleaner or clearer water. If I'm faced with kind of off-color water, okay, algified water, a little chalkier water, or just stained water in general, or I've got those more challenging light conditions like overcast and whatnot, I will use root beer. I like root beer. Now, there's root beer gold flake, and red flake. There's a lot of combinations. But root beer is that nice, dark, rich color. These are now I'm talking about my confidence colors. There's a lot of darker colors that you could go with. I mentioned earlier the Bayou Tiger, watermelon red, colors like that. But for me personally, I've got it up here somewhere. One of the colors I use a ton is this Right Stuff color. It's basically got copper and gold flake, and it's basically a root beer base. I find that Right Stuff color does me right this time of year when I'm fishing kind of off color water. But when I'm fishing, I'm going to say low light, or I'm fishing for speckled trout in particular, which we do a lot of in the mornings, I'm going to fish a glow style bait. Any of those night glow colors that might have a combination with a chartreuse tail. I don't know if I've got one sitting up here like tater salad or anything like that. These are great for trout. Or electric chicken. Everybody loves electric chicken that's a trout angler. If you're fishing a pop and cork rig or something like that, electric chicken's probably in your tackle bag or in one of the compartments of your boat. But those are the colors, believe it or not, that are tried and true that I love to fish this time of year when I absolutely got to catch speckled trout, redfish, and flounder, especially the redfish and the speckled trout. Remember that pearl chartreuse, more of an all-around color. Kind of off-color water, not perfect. Try that root beer with the gold flake, try it. I mean, if you want to add like a chartreuse head to it or something, give it a little bit more pop, do it. But early morning or any time you're fishing for trout this time of year, because there's such sight predators, definitely consider using glow and electric chicken. Now keep in mind that water depth and even the color of the bottom can affect what your bait looks like, what your lure color looks like. I'll give you an example. If you have a darker bottom, it's going to absorb more light. So it's not going to have that reflectivity that sand would have. And just imagine the depth of the water. The deeper it is, the bait's not going to stand out as much either. So that chartreusey look is going to become more, and white are going to become even more important if you're fishing for like flounder near the bottom. So you're going to use a lot of that all around color, that pearl chartreuse. And then for me, I don't mind adding a few accoutrements to make sure that we're going to get bites. It's all about getting to eat. So if you want to add scent like Procure, if you want to add rattles, we've got a rattlesnaker at Z-Man that I love to add either weight or rattles with. It's a fantastic little tool. You put that little glass ampule of shot in there, and it gives that bait a little extra something for drawing power. And then even if you want to use a piece of terminal tackle like an underspin jig head that would have a little blade that would give it a little bit of flash, that's okay. This time of year, those are the kind of additions or accoutrements, if you will, that's going to get you a few extra bites and draw fish in. I love that underspin play, honestly, for flounder. It works fantastic. Now let's just say you're not getting bit. I've made these suggestions and you're seeing fish, but you can't get them to eat. Well, you can either change the color, which I would highly recommend changing something, but you can also change the size of the bait, because lots of times it just comes down to lure size and definitely lure speed. Sometimes they want it a little slower or making contact with the bottom, or sometimes they just want it faster to chase. So think about that when you're making these decisions. But overall, I feel like this is the kind of stuff for you summertime anglers that's really going to hit home if you pick some of these colors and understand how spread out the fish are and how drawing power matters. What I really want to know is, what are your go-to colors? Drop those in the comments below. I'd really love to hear, especially if you'll add in there where you're fishing. Not the spot, the region, because that's important. And we'll all learn from that. That way we'll know where you are. We'll know what colors are hot in those zones. If you liked what you learned here today on FlatsClass YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. I would love to have you here each and every day for some of these hot inshore tips. That's all I've got for you for right now, but I'll be back here tomorrow with another great inshore tip.